Question is, are my brake pads Wallaby Ted's older brother? As we all know, Wallaby Ted's older brother is Roo Ted. So here's how I tell whether my brake pads need replacing. It's almost impossible to see the condition of the front pads while they're in place. My manual says to replace them when the pads are down to where the groove is. But the general rule of thumb is, if the brake pads only have 1 mil left, then you need to replace them. For me, the easiest way to check the front pads is just to undo the two 12 mil bolts and remove the caliper. Because my rims are painted, I need to be careful when I pull the caliper off, or I'll scratch the rim. There's only a 15th of clearance, but it's doable. Rightio then, now I can see those grooves that the manual talks about. As you can see, I still have a fair bit of wear left on these pads. You can also see that the right pad is worn down a lot more than the left pad. This is relatively normal with single-sided piston calipers. By the way, these pads have done 40,000 kilometres and they're still the originals. But there's no rule of thumb as to how many kilometres you'll get out of a set of brake pads. This is going to vary with your riding style and riding conditions. So don't assume that just because, for example, you've only done 10,000 kilometres, that your brake pads will be fine. So don't be a slack ass with maintenance, check them regularly. Okay, now for the rear brake pads. This is quite a bit easier because you can see both pads when you're viewing the bike from the back. The manual says replace the pads if they're down to this line shown on the diagram. I can't see any line. I guess I could if I imagined it. You can see the pad thickness between the two red lines. The yellow arrow is pointing to the disc itself. Of course, there's a pad either side of this disc. Anyway, because I can't see this line that the manual talks about, I'll use 1 mil as the rule of thumb. What is this millimetre you talk about? Say people from backward countries that still use the imperial system. A steel ruler is 1 millimetre thick, so you can use a steel ruler and put it on the pads to see whether the pads are 1 mil thick or not. Anyway, both front and back pads on mine are fine, and they'll be fine for another few thousand K yet.